Hello, everyone, and welcome to this ABA Day micro-advocacy breakout session hosted by the ABA Young Lawyers Division. This session will spotlight the critical role legal professionals play when disaster strikes. Each year, the YLD Disaster Legal Services Team provides free legal assistance to survivors of hurricanes, floods, wildfires, and other emergencies, helping people navigate housing disputes, lost documents, appeals, and more. You'll hear from two key leaders in this space, Amanda Brown, who heads the YLD Disaster Legal Services Team, and Trushti Kathari, Disaster Grants Program Counsel 2 at the Legal Services Corporation, and also Vice Director of Implementation for the YLD's Disaster Legal Services Team. After their segment, you'll hear from Kenneth Goldsmith, Senior Legislative Counsel and State Legislative Liaison at the ABA, who will explain how you can advocate for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program by recording and sharing your own PSLF story and your perspective on the program, and then sending that directly to your members of Congress. Thank you again for being part of ABA Day 2025 and for your commitment to legal advocacy. Before we begin, I want to extend a sincere thank you to our sponsors, Forum, our premier sponsor, powering the advocacy tools you'll use today, and our headline sponsors, SKO Gov and Baker Donaldson. Their support helps make events like this possible.
Hey everyone, Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick here, proudly representing Pennsylvania's 1st Congressional District. It's an honor to join you remotely today and to stand with such dedicated advocates in our shared longstanding fight to expand access to justice. As an attorney, as a member of Congress, and as the co-chair of the Bipartisan Access to Legal Aid Caucus, I've worked closely with many of you for several years now, and I've seen the real-world impact of your work, from helping veterans secure benefits, helping survivors of domestic violence find safety, and helping families avoid eviction, and helping communities rebuild after disasters. The civil justice gap is wide, as we all know, and it's also growing. But the Legal Services Corporation has remained a steady force for good. For more than 50 years, LSC has delivered essential legal support to millions of Americans who otherwise would have no one to turn to. And as we celebrate LSC's 51st anniversary, I just want to reaffirm my full support, my full bipartisan support for its mission, and my continued commitment to working alongside you to defend and strengthen this vital institution. You all have helped build a coalition that cuts across party lines and that keeps the promise of justice alive for those who need it the most. And that work has never been more important than right now. We've come a long way together, but obviously there's a lot more work to do, because equal justice under the law must be more than a phrase above a courthouse door. It must be a guarantee we deliver on for every single American in every community across this country. So thank you for your partnership. Thank you for everything you do to defend liberty and to pursue justice. God bless.
I'm Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon of Pennsylvania's 5th Congressional District, and I'm so glad to welcome you to the American Bar Association's annual Fly-In event. As a former Legal Services Board member and now co-chair of the Bipartisan Access to Legal Aid Caucus, I'm so grateful for the advocacy that you and your colleagues are doing on behalf of legal services. And I wanted to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come to the Hill and speak to my colleagues about the importance of legal aid, not just for the individual client, but for our communities and to the actual functioning of a civil society. As members of the ABA and lawyers in your own communities, your influence in Congress cannot be overstated. Your convening here to speak with your representatives brings a gravitas to the issue that's difficult to ignore, and you have a compelling story to tell. You all know how important the work of legal services is and how grossly underfunded. You know how access to justice is not a reality in this country, with funding for LSC remaining stagnant for decades. But many of my colleagues don't know that, and you can help draw their attention to it. Legal aid benefits constituents in every member's district, so please try to draw those local connections when you meet with them and their staffs, whether it's to seniors or veterans or families who could be illegally evicted. If any offices seem receptive, Please tell them about the training module that my office put together to help constituent services staff collaborate with local legal services in order to drive better outcomes for more constituents. I'm proud to be leading the letter to appropriators this year to call for increased funding for the Legal Services Corporation, and your work on the Hill will be a big help. Please let me know how I can be helpful or if I can follow up with anyone that you meet with, and I look forward to seeing you around the Hill. Thank you.
Now, I'm excited to turn it over to Danny Burrell, Chair of the Young Lawyers Division, who will lead our segment on disaster legal services and guide through our discussions.
Thank you for joining our digital ABA Day, the American Bar Association's largest annual lobbying day, where hundreds of lawyers gather in Washington, D.C. and online to meet members of Congress and to advocate for issues that are important to us. I also want to thank Representative Mary Gay Scanlon and Representative Brian Fitzpatrick for their leadership of the Congressional Access to Legal Aid Caucus. My name is Danny Burrell, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the ABA Young Lawyer Division Chair, representing 90,000 law students and young lawyers from across the country. I am a Louisiana young lawyer in private practice, and today I'm joined by some of our fellow ABA YLD leaders from our Disaster Legal Services team. Today, we are going to work with the ABA's Governmental Affairs Office to ask Congress to consider advocating for funding disaster legal services. To understand the importance of disaster legal service programs, who it helps, and the impact it has on our American citizens, our DLS leaders will provide us with education of the program and the boots on the ground impact it has to all of our citizens.
So we're going to get into the substance of our conversation today. And at the outset, just wanted to give you an overview of what we'll be talking about. So I'd like to give you a high-level overview of what disaster legal services actually even is. What does that look like? And Shrusti's going to talk to us about why disaster survivors even need legal assistance, what that actually looks like in terms of service delivery, and what types of issues people generally experience in the wake of natural disasters. So as far as background of DLS actually goes, a lot of people aren't even familiar with the fact that there's federal legislation that outlines the requirement for providing disaster legal services to folks that have been impacted by disasters but don't necessarily or can't necessarily afford to hire an attorney to help them with their issue. So under the Stafford Act, disaster legal services has been described as a program to be implemented by FEMA in the wake of federally declared disasters. So not every single disaster gets an activation for disaster legal services, but all of the largest disasters that you see that impact a large number of people have this component to program delivery that's administered through FEMA. So the ABA has had a partnership with FEMA for over 50 years to help implement these services and make sure that survivors are getting access to these critical services.
Lawyers play an integral role when it comes to disaster response. We're there before, after, and way long after a disaster actually strikes. And disaster legal issues occur on a cyclical manner for every disaster that exists. In the immediate aftermath, you're going to see simpler issues in the short term, such as lease terminations and evictions, utility shutoffs, security deposit issues. Maybe say you're a scummy landlord that's not working out. Maybe your clients lost all of their documents in the disaster itself when their house flooded or burnt down and they need to replace all their documentations. And then you're going to see issues such as income protections when it comes to replacing your assistance for unemployment assistance and public benefit applications. One other thing you're going to see in the beginning of it is the necessity to apply for FEMA assistance when a disaster first strikes. As I said, it continues on for months and maybe years sometimes. Going forward in the medium term, 1 to 6 months, you're going to see more of the FEMA appeal issues that come in. Landlord-tenant issues will continue on. Real property title clearing issues and probate issues that might come in. Moving on in the long term, 6 months to years after an event, it can really stretch out. Oftentimes, we do know our friends in Florida, Louisiana are still handling cases for Katrina that occurred a little over 18 years ago now. In those long-term issues, we see foreclosure, legal issues that turn up, landlord-tenant issues that might come in, flood insurance dispute, FEMA recoupment issues, and disaster tax relief applications or bankruptcies. Disaster survivors require the most assistance possible. They're people that have gone through the biggest change in their life, the most traumatic effect, and they're trying to just get back into recovery phases. So any assistance that can be given to them to navigate the difficult bureaucracies and the difficult systems that we have in place to get them back on their feet is a great help. And lawyers can be that person. Lawyers can be the advocates that can help understand the system, that can help navigate it, and that can help resolve any disputes or issues that might be occurring over the time.
We also see that there's this compounded effect of the access to justice barrier that you've already heard about through the ABA presentations, through conversations with LSC, helping everybody to understand that low-income and marginalized people in the United States simply don't lack access to legal services the way that they could or should. And what that ultimately results in is an inequitable recovery. So folks that can afford lawyers, folks that have money, folks that have the knowledge of how systems work, they're going to recover just fine. But the most vulnerable people and populations that we're dealing with go without. And it's compounded in terms of what happens after a disaster. So these partnerships that are done through the ABA in connection with the local legal service corporation organizations that we partner with all the time really help build the knowledge about the availability of legal services and what these programs can actually do in order to assist survivors and help them get back on their feet. So shifting now to sort of some of the impact that this work has. I'll just say since 2020 alone, partners through this program have served over 10,000 disaster survivors. So those are 10,000 people that have a better chance at a full and equitable recovery from that major disaster that Ashwasti mentioned is really traumatic for a lot of people. So having that support is extremely important. And then just since 2024 alone, about this time last year, our program and all the organizations that we collaborate have activated for over 40 major natural disasters. I'd love to highlight the work of our team member, Elizabeth Brooks Savage, who was our DLS team member, as well as a district representative serving in North Carolina in the wake of Hurricane Helene this year. So Hurricane Helene, as everybody knows, it came up through the Gulf and it really impacted, I think it was a 7-state implementation. But North Carolina was really hard hit because they weren't expecting this. And Brooks just did amazing work in basically coordinating a multi-agency response that involved not just FEMA, but also state agencies, obviously includes the ABA and our partnership, includes legal service corporation grantees, non-legal service corporation legal providers, the Red Cross. Tons and tons of organizations came to the table to talk about the needs of the community, the legal needs that they had, and really activated and mobilized an incredible response to making sure that those communities were getting access to legal services. This is the work that is done under these programs. This is the work of disaster legal services. And this is the work that is essential, and again, in making sure that there is an equitable recovery. So this is just one example of the value of these types of federal partnerships that we have. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share about the impact and the work of the Disaster Legal Services Program for ABA Day. Thank you, guys.
As you can see, disaster legal services is an important issue that impacts all of us. Today, we have a chance to advocate directly to our members of Congress and the White House using the ABA Congressional Messaging Portal to continue to support these important programs. Please take some time to send a message of support through the ABA Day's Congressional Messaging Portal. Thank you for those of you who were able to join us, and we look forward to working alongside you in the halls of Congress and online to take this important action. Thank you for everyone who has participated in ABA Day.
So those folks who were barely hanging on by a thread before the pandemic were absolutely, scrambling during the pandemic.
I was a shuttle driver for the VA. COVID really put a reduction in our department. I couldn't afford to pay my full amount of rent, car note, insurance, and even food at that time. Then last year in May, I was in a car accident, and that's when my whole life had changed. I was out of work in chiropractor for about 4 months and no income coming in, no nothing. I was about to lose my place.
Cynthia is not alone. The Justice Gap study shows that in the past year, 33% of low-income Americans experienced at least one civil legal problem linked to the COVID-19 pandemic. Most cannot afford or access the legal help they need. In the United States, there is no right to counsel in most civil legal matters.
I didn't know what direction to go in. I was going to court for a whole year. I had nowhere to go.
I actually came to know Miss Price because her case was up in court one day and I happened to be present for that court calendar. I was able to look at her documents, speak with her about her story, and put together an offer of settlement to her landlord using rental assistance funds from DeKalb County.
With help from a Legal Services Corporation grantee, Atlanta Legal Aid Society, Cynthia was able to remain in her home. Her story is an example of what's possible if we can close the justice gap in the civil legal system.
In situations for people who don't have rental assistance, people are on the street, they're losing their housing. The moratorium on evictions has expired. There are not enough legal aid lawyers in the country to touch even a small percentage of the need that's out there.
I never could see myself in this situation, never. But I thank God I'm one of the ones that got the help that I needed.
Thank you, Danny. And thank you for having Amanda and Shrusty for an incredible, powerful discussion on disaster legal services and why funding for the Legal Services Corporation is absolutely essential to helping communities recover. I would also echo her sentiment to please send your advocacy letters to your members of Congress. You can do this with a couple clicks and under 5 minutes. And you can also customize your letters for more impact. Now, we shift to another cornerstone of ABA Day advocacy, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. PSLF helps ensure that lawyers who choose public service careers, including legal aid attorneys, prosecutors, and defenders, can continue that work without being buried under student debt. And in this moment, we need to protect the program from proposed cuts and policy rollbacks. We really do see this as a job placement program to help address legal deserts that uses student debt forgiveness as an incentive, not just a student debt forgiveness program. To walk us through the landscape and the action we can take, I'm pleased to welcome Kenneth Goldsmith, Senior Legislative Counsel for the ABA's Governmental Affairs Office. Ken will also explain how you can record and share a short video message about why PSLF matters and why it must be preserved.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ken Goldsmith from the ABA Governmental Affairs Office, and I'm here to talk to you about the Federal Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program as part of ABA Day Digital 2025. Welcome. As you may know, PSLF is a program that exchanges student loan relief for at least 10 years of qualifying public service and timely payments. The ABA played a central role leading up to and in the program's creation in 2007, and along with our allies and advocates like you, we have been defending it from attacks most every year since. So the fact that you're hearing from me now is a reflection of the attention being given to PSLF in Congress, although you won't see much in writing other than rhetoric like a recent Wall Street Journal editorial calling for an end to the program, or the president's recent executive order seeking to exclude some organizations from it. Based on how this year has gone so far, there's likely more where that came from too. But despite the absence of a clear, articulated attack in Congress, we need to be vigilant and strategically proactive. As you may have heard, members of Congress are going through the proverbial couch cushions looking for loose programs to reduce or end in order to help fund the president's multi-trillion-dollar agenda. While bigger programs have lawmakers' attention, we do hear a suggestion that PSLF is hanging out there like a cash money piñata, and staff on both sides have confirmed that everything should be considered as on the table. And what does that mean, on the table? It means that we're starting from Republican proposals for higher ed reform in recent Congresses, although you should know that they are listening for additional and alternate ideas as well. But currently, these proposals attempt to get at things like funding or forgiving debt for tuitions now topping $70,000 a year at some law schools, while a degree from a school costing just half that is just as valid for entry to law practice. So their leading ideas include such things as ending the generous Grad Plus loan program, eliminating existing income-driven repayment plans for a new one that may be less generous, and limiting both how much a person may borrow from the federal government in a given year and over their lifetime. This has also included proposals from both sides to reform PSLF over the years. Such proposals seek to limit how much you can get from the program. During his term, President Obama proposed just $57,500 as the max, and others proposed restrictions on program eligibility. One draft bill asked Congress just proposed excluding doctors and lawyers outright. And at the farthest extreme, the president in his first term, like others in Congress now, are now on record as opposing forgiveness programs, including PSLF. I share this with you to give you a glimpse that there are rational policy reasons for even draconian proposals, and there is room for conversation. But cutting PSLF to save money without considering its impact is reckless. At no time in 20 years have I heard a proposal for what to do were the program to shrink or end. It would be like tearing down a highway, sending tractor trailers through main streets 24/7, because that's who would have to absorb the cost of ending PSLF. Local communities who need the services but can't afford them. And that gap between the high cost of an advanced degree for licensure and public sector pay is now wider than what justified the program's creation 20 years ago. So there may not be an articulated threat to the program just yet, but there's no immediate threat to a piñata when you first hang it up either. We cannot wait for legislation to be written, especially for a fast-moving process. PSLF was created through budget reconciliation after all. And we're expecting action to begin once both chambers have adopted the final compromise set of instructions for how much committees should cut, and the Senate just approved its plan. Now, thankfully, working with you, we're good at what we do, and that's made easier by our collaboration with the influential National PSLF Coalition. And this year, the ABA is rolling out a new digital campaign to preserve PSLF. It's launching at ABA Day, but it will go for as long as there's a need. And we have a new trick up our sleeve that we think can turn pushing back into turning tables. And that's because with everything that lawmakers and their staff and the administration know and are considering, what they don't know is you. So to introduce you, we're looking to move from beyond inboxes and voicemail to video, where there's no mistaking that you're a voter and not a bot. With a new feature, you'll be able to record a short clip sharing some of your story and personal and PSLF successes for you, for your employer, and those you help, and then have that video uploaded to your members of Congress directly. If you're a hiring manager, the same applies. What does PSLF success mean for you? And what's the plan B if the program goes away? To help, we have talking points at ambar.org/PSLF that are responsive to the kinds of questions and criticisms we hear. For example, remind them that PSLF is not a giveaway. It's an unprecedented and unrivaled 10-year work and repayment requirement. And let them know what that means day to day over that decade. It's not easy. Remind them that all legal interests are protected by PSLF providers, whether prosecutors or public defenders or legal aid lawyers who keep families resilient and more stable in crisis. And Let them know that PSLF reaches every state and territory in the union in an identical way. No winners or losers based on who's in office in a given year. And let them know that they should join the bipartisan PSLF caucus when it relaunches later this Congress. If we do this, working with you, working with our allies, including the tremendous PSLF coalition, we think that we have a good shot at shielding the program and keeping cuts to hopefully just a haircut. So check out that website, ambar.org/PSLF, where you'll find more about this new feature and how to use it. Look over the points, consider the story you want to tell, and know that you'll have a maximum impact for your time. And thank you again. PSLF exists because of advocates like you. And with your help, it will continue to close the shortages, bring relief to legal deserts, and provide key services to other under-resourced communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken, for breaking down the importance of PSLF and the opportunity each of us has to share our stories in a powerful, personal way. Again, we invite all of you to record and send your perspective on PSLF to your members of Congress. And please don't forget to also send your letter supporting disaster legal aid. Before we close, I want to again thank our generous sponsors, Quorum, our premier sponsor whose tools have helped power every advocacy action taken today, and our headline sponsors, SKO Gov and Baker Donaldson. I would also like to thank Danny Burrell and the entire Disaster Legal Services team for all you do on an ongoing basis. You make us proud of the legal profession. And thank you to all of you for being here and being part of ABA Day 2025. Whether you're advocating in Washington or from your office, your voice helps drive change. Let's keep the momentum going, and let's continue standing up for justice in the legal profession. Thank you all.